I'm Raj Ford. I work for the BBC in Birmingham as a regional television journalist and producer. At the moment, I'm seconded out to the NUJ as the rep for the BBC's nations and regions. I'm also on the NUJ's National Executive Council, the Policy Committee, Equality Council, and the Black Members Council. So I'm really pleased to be welcoming you to the NUJ's first ever mental health conference to coincide with Mental Health Week. And this is my first time ever hosting a conference, so bear with me. And of course, happy to take any constructive feedback. So the theme of today is to look at how we can take a collective approach to mental health for our members and how we can help each other in this profession where our well-being tends not to be discussed, even though we often witness and work through traumatic events. The last 2 years has been instrumental in shaping and changing our industry. We've never seen anything quite like it, certainly not in my professional life, which spans over 20 years. We've lived through unprecedented times, a pandemic in the modern world, a constant, never-ending stream of news, pictures, opinions, comments. We've been designated as key workers, reporting from the front line, bringing daily stats and expertise and knowledge, yet still our members face abuse just for doing their jobs. It's this reality which leads our union to come together today to talk about this and through shared experience, look at how we can help ourselves and each other. Whether freelance or staff, working from home or another workplace, everyone has experienced challenges to their mental health. Today's conference has been organised based on feedback we've received from reps and members about challenges to their mental health. Taking a collective approach to mental health is vital to tackle work-related causes of mental distress. We aim to provide reps with the resources to bargain with employers to take mental health more seriously and to make members aware of their rights and the support they can access through the NUJ. Now, we have a fantastic lineup of speakers today and have the opportunity to learn from other trade unions and networks, as well as from our own workplace reps. Now, if you want to tweet at any time during the day, please use hashtag NUJ Mental Health. And obviously we welcome you doing that as much as you can to promote the conference and what we're doing today. There will be a series of workshops throughout the month on a range of issues, including health and safety in the workplace, working safely for freelancers, creative writing, mindfulness and reporting trauma. Follow the link in the chat for more information and please register and share with other members. So now we're going to go to our first speaker, Michelle Stanistreet, the General Secretary of the National Union of Journalists. Michelle has been leading the union and our membership since 2011. She's seen firsthand the challenges members face and are still facing from the pandemic and the ongoing uncertainty of jobs and contracts, the rising cost of living, and the increase in hostility and online abuse towards our profession. Michelle.
Thanks so much, Raj, and morning everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm sat here in a slightly rainy and grey Catford in London. It's a bit sunnier where you all are. I think Raj is so right to point to what an unprecedented period it's been, and I think that's what makes this conference really timely. Pandemic life and lockdowns has inevitably hit all of us in different ways, impacting our work, our families, our well-being and our lives. And for many journalists, that's meant working more intensively than ever, juggling family and care and responsibilities at the same time. And for those who've lost jobs and commissions, including countless freelancers, the loss of work and financial precarity, coupled with inadequate support from the government, has made this one of the most challenging periods of their professional lives. And I think the reality of forced working from home and restrictions means different things to different people. So obviously for some, it's opened up greater flexibility and opportunities and a better work-life balance. There are no doubt out there those lucky people who manage to find themselves and learn new languages and write books in this time. For others, it's been a significant imposition on domestic life, and we know how domestic violence has spiked during this period of time, and particularly the experiences for many women have been that shift in work-life balance and the domestic sharing of responsibilities has, if anything, gone backwards, leaving them doing far more than their share at home. And then you've got those people who live in shared accommodation, and so having to work out of bedrooms, no adequate kit or space to separate their home and work. That's been a really grueling and difficult period. And I think if you throw in sickness and worrying about family and loved ones, it's got the capacity to make a pretty toxic mix. And tragically, far too many people over the last couple of years have had to deal with the loss of loved ones and the awfulness of having to mourn them in isolation and without the comfort of being supported by family and friends in person, deprived of traditional rights that are so important to how we process death and how we grieve, and denied the opportunity to kind of come together to celebrate loved ones' lives collectively. So we know all of that leaves a big impact. And what seemed manageable in that first weird period of lockdown, when we were all facing something bizarre and unprecedented globally, it steadily became something else. And I think it is an important point that what's tolerable in an emergency, when most people's instinct is to just get on with it and make the best of a difficult crisis, is just not sustainable as time goes on. So I think the cumulative impact on our collective mental health is a real issue, and one that many people are only just beginning to realise, and that makes it an important and vital workplace and a trade union issue as well. And we are kind of going through that period of flux at the moment and transition, aren't we? The recalibration of life, interacting in public and at work, getting out and about more, that's still very much a work in progress for many as people are moving back into more in-person contact or hybrid working models. For our industry, of course, there was never any choice for many of our members. Thousands of journalists were still travelling to work through the lockdowns, operating in newsrooms, out in the streets, covering and documenting COVID and everything else that was going on at that time. And that also made it an incredibly intensive period for the NUJ, with the economic impact of COVID in the media industry hitting really hard and swiftly in our sector. And I think that makes the act of having to go out there and deliver our support and help virtually a difficult prospect as well, because as a union, you want to be there in person for people. You don't want someone having to go through those difficulties in isolation or dealing with company processes, that included people being disciplined or losing their jobs, having to do that virtually whilst they're sat in their front room on a computer without in-person support and a shoulder to lean on. So I think a common thread, however all of our experience has been different and distinct, a common thread that has been a challenging time. And I'm sure I'm not alone in kind of feeling knackered and done in after, a couple of years that have been really difficult and full on. Like many who've had health issues in this period, the experience of remote working can act as a bit of a disconnect. It's easier to force yourself to carry on working beyond what's sensible when you can just still switch on your computer, plaster on a smile and your game face and get on with meetings and work. Something that maybe it would have been harder to do if people were having to kind of get up and get to their office and go about their business in the normal way. And we all know that getting through on adrenaline has a consequence. It's got a long-term impact on physical and mental health, and that's something that we need to be much more aware of. And it's one of the reasons why being proactive about protecting our own mental health and those of colleagues and our family is so important. And to me, being part of a union has always been about having a collective voice at work and a collective voice about your work. It's about being part of a family of journalists, however dysfunctional that family might sometimes be, where you know that someone's always got your back. And mental health is too often individualised, and too often it's got that emphasis on resilience. It's down to you to kind of combat it in some way. But we all know there's only so much individuals can do, and that's where collective action comes in. And our members' health and our members' safety is at the core of a trade union movement. And when it comes to mental health, it is and should be no different. So raising awareness of the challenges that do impact our mental well-being, learning to spot the signs and putting in place effective solutions is a work in progress as we, you know, as a movement, particularly try to do our bit to normalise those conversations and break down any barriers that might exist and make mental health as straightforward an issue to discuss and address as our broader health. But it's a vital piece of work, and it's something that the NUJ is very committed to and committed to getting right, because we know that life as a journalist can be tough. As Raj was just saying, you know, we're dealing with emotional situations when covering stories all the time. There's poor pay and insecure contracts that are endemic in the industry. Many people right now are incredibly worried about the cost of living increases. And the environment for many reporters is increasingly hostile, which is why the union's been doing so much work on safety to tackle the rise in incidents of harassment and abuse. We're about to launch a digital safety toolkit, and we've got a new film ready to launch this month, which is brilliant. It features first-hand testimony from NUJ members who've been subjected to harassment attacks, and this is not anything that should be seen to be part of a normal day at work for journalists around the UK and Ireland. And our reps and activists are very much at the driving force of this work, making great inroads. They know it matters. And the difference our reps and workplace chapels can make to improve policy and practice and hold employers to account is immense. And we know it's how fairer, healthier workplaces are created. So whether it is on wellbeing, on tackling bullying and harassment, or ensuring dignity at work, creating transparency over pay and opportunities for progression that are fair and transparent, battling targets cultures that we're seeing increasingly in many parts of the industry that inject unnecessary stress into our work, or putting in place robust processes to avoid PTSD. There's a role for collective union action to make a real difference on all of those important issues. I'd just highlight as well that, you know, during this period of time, the work of our charity, NUJ Extra, has also been brilliant. It's supported so many journalists who just simply couldn't make ends meet, who are going through real difficulties, and the charity proved a real lifeline for them. It's another brilliant thing that the NUJ does as a union to fund the work of that charity, and the George Viner Fund, which funds bursaries for scholars from Black and minority ethnic backgrounds who are keen to get that first foot on the journalistic ladder. I think we do a really good job of putting lots of our important values as a union into tangible practice and action. This year's, I just want to mention, this year's theme of Mental Health Awareness Week is loneliness, and I think that's an important reminder for all of us to connect freelancers into those workplace conversations and work and support structures that are going on in our chapels, and for all of our members to feel that the NUJ is absolutely there for them. And that's why today and this month's sessions aren't a one-off. Later this year, we've got a PTSD roundtable coming up, bringing together those with expertise from across journalism, as well as learning from other unions such as FBU, and also we've got an NUJ Equality Summit that's planned. And if any of you kind of here today kind of are sparked with some great ideas about work or activities you'd like the NUJ to explore or do more of, just please get in touch and share your thoughts. And so I hope everyone gets something positive out of today's sessions. I'm sure you all will, and that you can head into the weekend re-energised and keen to get involved in the union's broader work on mental health and other important issues. And finally, before I hand back to Raj, I just want to say, I mean, I've had no involvement at all in the planning of today and the sessions coming up. There's been a brilliant team effort going on in the background to make it happen. And I just want to say thank you to all of that team who's been working on it. And a special thank you to our Vice President, Natasha Hurst, who's going to be speaking in a moment, for her commitment and her prioritisation of what is really important work. So have a lovely day, everybody. And Raj, back to you.
Thanks, Michelle. And I was about to do exactly the same, extend my thanks to Natasha for her efforts in organising this conference. It's been a lot of work gone on behind the scenes. So now I'd like to introduce our Vice President, Natasha Hurst. If you want to go ahead, Natasha.
Thank you, Raj, and thanks very much, Michelle, for joining us today. It has been a big team effort going on in the background over the last few months to put this conference together, and it's very much come about as a result of feedback from our members and from our reps at our training courses, at our reps briefings, at the NUJ council meetings. It's the one theme that consistently comes out of everything. It's been the impact of the pandemic on our members and how we can do as much as possible as a union to try to support that. So I'm really pleased that we have this conference. We'll continue to put more events on and to take your feedback. It's really important that we are putting training and workshops together that are meeting your needs as members. So please do give us that feedback and keep in touch with us on this. I think the pandemic has, for all its difficulties, it has started to open up much needed conversations about mental health in our industry. There are huge pressures on our members coming in from all sorts of directions. And we haven't always had that openness to be able to talk about how it impacts on us as individuals, and also to be taking better care of ourselves, which we're not necessarily always that good at. And so certainly for me during the pandemic, it's been a great way actually for me to connect online and network, to talk to more people, to make more friends. Raj here is, a good friend of mine. I've never met her in person. So, I'm certainly looking forward to being able to connect up in person with more of our members and reps in the near future. And we all know that social connections are really important in terms of protecting our mental health, having people to talk to when we've had a really tough day, but people who understand our work and who understand what it is that we do and the impact that can have on us. Core to our values in the NUJ is solidarity, and that's something that we have all needed, no matter what part of the industry we work in, whether we're freelance, whether we're staff, whether we live alone or we have our family and friends around us. We all need that sense of knowing that we don't have to get through all of this on our own. And as Michelle said, the NUJ continually campaigns for fairer working conditions, and equality, diversity and inclusion is at the core of all of this. If we have fairer workplaces, a fairer society in general, that is something that helps us to protect our mental health. It's also important to think of groups of workers who face additional discrimination, both inside and outside of work. The pandemic does not affect everybody equally. There are additional inequalities in life that reinforce the negative impact that the pandemic has had, or that poor working conditions can have. And that's something that we always keep in mind in the work that we do. And freelancers like myself who often work in an isolated way, we're still dealing with that ongoing insecurity. As a freelance photographer, my work disappeared overnight at the beginning of the pandemic, and that was the same for many others. And it will take a while, I think, for some of our members to get their work back on track. We don't have holiday pay, we don't have sick pay, and that kind of insecurity for freelancers is really quite significant. I did want to bring something personal in here, because it's my own experiences as a survivor of domestic abuse that has motivated my activism within the NUJ. And as a freelance, I ended up homeless, living in a women's refuge. And then with PTSD, I was unable to work. I was out of work for about 3 years altogether. But it was my NUJ branch and my colleagues who supported me to get more involved with the union. And they helped me make new connections that helped me build up my work and build up my career again. As a freelance, you can't just say, okay, next week I'm going to start my full-time work again. It doesn't happen like that. It builds up really slowly. And that's a time of great uncertainty as well. And I had huge support from my union, from my colleagues in doing that. NUJ Training Wales courses and VEPS training courses helped me to build up my confidence to diversify my skills as well, which has been really important for my career. But more than anything, my union gave me a voice, and it gave me an opportunity to create change for others as well. And that's why events like this are so important to me. The work that we do within our equalities councils, we have the Equality Council, Black Members Council, Disabled Members Council, 60 plus, and I've probably missed one, Black Members, no, so that got the whole lot. We have the LGBT plus network as well. So there are informal spaces within the union where you can get involved, find out a bit more about what we do. And it's really important to me that every member knows that you do have a voice, you can make a difference, and you can shape what our union does at all sorts of different levels, however works for you. And so when I look back at where I was 7 years ago, and now I'm the vice president of our union, and it's a huge honour for me to be in this position. And it's one where I really do hope that other members can also take those opportunities that the union provides for them. It does make me emotional, sorry. But that is the point of today, really, isn't it? To be able to bring those issues out and to know that we're in a safe space where we can talk with our colleagues and to share those things. And also never ever underestimate the impact that you can have through the smallest of actions when you're looking out for your colleagues, whether it's as a member looking out for people in your workplace, or as a freelance connecting up with others in your network, or whether it's as a rep, negotiating with employers, representing members. The work you do is immense, and makes a real difference. And when we're talking about mental health, we've been talking about our members, but our reps, you need to look after yourselves as well. Burnout is always a risk. And in addition to already busy and challenging jobs, many cases that you represent will probably involve a member who's experiencing some level of mental distress as a result of the situation that they find themselves in. And that is going to have an impact on our reps on a personal level as well. One of the other things that we have put together to go alongside the conference today has been a mental health toolkit for reps. In our next session, we'll hear from John Crowley, who will talk a bit about the work that the Headlines Network has done with journalists. They've released some resources which we'll talk about, which give you direct pointers about how you can look after your own mental health and support your colleagues. The NUJ toolkit sort of builds further on that in looking at the work that we can do in a practical sense in our workplaces and within our networks to negotiate with employers, to put policies and practices in place to make our workplaces fairer and safer, and to be thinking about a wider range of issues. We all bring everything outside of work to work with us. Michelle mentioned domestic abuse, that's something that has a massive impact, but also people's coping mechanisms. There might be members who have a problem with gambling or substance misuse issues. So what we wanted to do within the toolkit was to show reps what you could be working with employers on in terms of having policies in place to support members who might find themselves in those situations. And then also there's information in there for members about the ways you can get involved within the union, and signposting to resources like helplines, financial advice, and places like NUJ Extra, where if you're experiencing financial issues, you can seek support. So we will share that toolkit with you as soon as possible, so that you'll have an opportunity to see what's in there and think about further actions that you can take place in your branches as well as in your workplaces. So I think that's enough from me there. Thank you ever so much, everybody who's joined us today. And please do stay in touch and give us feedback, and enjoy the rest of the day. I hope you get a lot out of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Natasha. That's, it's really important to note what Natasha's talking about with post-traumatic stress disorder and, the actual personal experiences of our members where they've, had to access those important tools from the union, and shows how important our union is. So we're going to take a little break. I'm just going to remind you that the speech to text link is in the chat. And also we'd like you to tweet about today at NUJ official, #NUJ Mental Health.